Okay, yep. And now we are live. And good evening, everyone. Hello, YouTube world. Yay. We actually have Sophia with us today. So I know we're live here and we're waiting for YouTube to catch up. So I'm going to hold on a second. So once I see us live on, here we go. It's popping up. And there it is. Okay. Again, hello, everyone in YouTube land.
Hello, everybody.
And as you know, this is Sophia.
Yeah,
And
it's just been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've been on to discuss the David Crowley case. Now, Greg is going to be trying. God, English would be good. Greg is going to try to join us in a few minutes. Now, William, I have not heard from William, but I do know that he works later in the day. So I don't expect to even possibly hear from him for at least for about a half an hour. And hopefully he'll jump on. Have not heard. He hasn't confirmed or said he can't make it. But we did hear from Greg. Sophia heard from Greg. And he's trying to get some things done, and he will try to jump on in a few minutes. What I have seen, and I have read the comments that have been left, and we have some new people, not only to my channel, but who've been following the Crowley case, and so they kind of, it's like, you're home here. I'm glad you're here. Join with us, talk about it. Feel free to, ask us questions, or if you feel like you want to do a live, jump on and do a live, or if you want us to do another live on a specific topic of the case, or if you want us to do a video on the case, let us know. And we will be more than happy to get in there and get it done. I have I think I have over 200 videos on my channel. Not all of them have something to do with the case, though. So you might find a lot of your questions answered if you look through some of the videos. Sophia, do you want to say anything while we're waiting for Mr. Greg?
Wow. I was just listening to what you had to say. I'm here for the ride.
Okay. Well, tonight. Okay, and tonight we are actually going to discuss the blood analysis. Now, it's a topic we've talked about a lot, and I've done videos on it. Sophia has done a lot of research on it. We did a video together on the blood, not just the DNA analysis, but the blood spatter patterns. There's a lot there that show not only was there probably somebody else there, but that the case and the murders did not occur the way that the narrative says that they did. We see 4 gunshot wounds to 3 heads and 0 throughout the entire house, inside, outside, garage, car, nowhere. 0 high velocity blood spatter, which is what you get with a gunshot wound to the head. There's low velocity, medium velocity, but no passive, but no high velocity blood spatter at all. And that's a problem. I mean, it's a huge problem. And in the blood, we see that oftentimes when it's a mixture of 2 or more individuals, David, Kamel, or Rania, or 2 of the other 3 are excluded. It'll be a mixture of 2 or more individuals, and the other 2 parties are excluded. And then they say that they would not expect to find this DNA match among the general population, anyone that is not related. Well, that only leaves a related person, which they never took blood samples. They didn't compare family members. But you would think, I mean, it's like common sense, common knowledge that if you have a blood sample on a weapon or a piece of evidence, and it shows the blood of one person. There are 3 people there. The other 2 people are excluded from contributing to that blood, but there are at least 2 or 3 contributors to that sample they've picked up. We have a problem, and it's a big problem. So, you have anything you want to add?
I mean, that's just the thing. Is they didn't do any testing outside of who was there in the house, and with those DNA results, it's contradicting the original story, the original narrative. But there are 3 major factors that basically rule out what the original narrative is, and that's the DNA, that's the blood spatter, and the fact that David died first, which we'll get into again. If you haven't watched our other videos, then this will be big news. But and this is literally the reason why I just dropped out of the videos later on, because the case was over for me. But
I mean, you can't argue with that. It's like when the autopsies state marked autolysis for David and then autolysis for Rania and Kamel. Or Ron, I don't believe I still am completely 100% convinced it is not Kamel on that floor. So the female body on the floor. And it's like, hello, you have one that is further in decomposition, David, compared to the other 2 victims on the floor. So explain to me, Apple Valley Police Department, BCA, and the coroner's office, please explain to me how someone who has further decomp died after those that they supposedly killed. And then the narrative was that David shot and killed his family, but then waited, what they said, maybe up to a day before he took his own life. And it's like, this dude's a miracle. You know, he's got all the things, all the cards up his sleeve to be able to, you know, do all that, die hours, if not a day later, and then make it so that his body decomposes faster in the same environment as the other 2. It doesn't work that way.
Correct. And then when you add in the fact that there is not any high velocity blood spatter, which high velocity is from a gunshot wound. Everything else is low velocity, medium. Medium is blunt force, and knife, low velocity. Oh gosh, it's been a year.
Like injuries, dripping, you know, as you're walking and it's dripping, that'll be passive. And then you have transfer patterns, and then you have all this other stuff. And there's evidence of transfer, there's evidence of passive, there's evidence of medium, but zero high velocity. And that is the only spray pattern you can get from a gunshot wound.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, there's also proof that these bodies, if it actually is them, they were moved after they were supposedly killed. Because if you look at the carpet where Kamel was laying, if she had died there with 2 gunshot wounds to her head, that whole area would be saturated in blood.
Yep.
But once they removed her body, and you see another photo of that living room and the carpet where the couch is, there's no blood there.
Yeah, there's no blood under any of them. There's decomp fluid from where the bodies had come in contact and were starting to break down. Now, there is evidence of that, but none of the bodies there's no blood underneath any of the areas. Now, David was missing a hand. Kamel was missing 2 hands, one under her body, one above her head, and then her head and the hand were covered by a blanket. not visible when they came in, they had no idea she was missing her head or both of her hands, because again, underneath the body and then like this, and then her on her stomach, and the top of her head was covered with a blanket, so not visible. They couldn't see anything, but still, so when they moved the blanket and then they're looking on the floor with all of these limbs missing, there would be blood, and there's not. No pools of blood at all. But there's, again, the huge problem. And I remember Greg talking about this. I think this is his bone of contention, that on the recliner, and the footrest was on, I think they lifted it up later or something to show the blood spot, if I'm remembering correctly. It's been a while, but you can look at the photos. But when it's in and on the floor, there's a pretty good size blood saturated section on the lower end where it's close to the floor, close to the rug. But there's no blood on the rug. None.
And they never tested it.
Yes.
So, I mean, they did test it, but they didn't run the test for the results. Let me rephrase.
Yeah. Did they? Yeah. And it's like, I don't even remember them swabbing it, but it's like, even if they did, yeah. So if they swabbed it, we'll look at that here in a minute, because I have the spreadsheet and I listed everything that they swabbed. But it's like, and if they're swabbing that, why would they not want to know who did that? You would think that they would want the entire puzzle, but they did the pick and choose. Well, let's look at the gun, which is fine. That makes sense. But then when you see David's blood on the magazine, which is loaded inside of the weapon, and there is zero way for that David's blood to end up on that magazine when he was not hurt. And they admit this, that he was not hurt prior to dying. They said they couldn't find any other wounds, but yet his blood is on the magazine inside the gun. And they have fingerprints, but they couldn't determine whose fingerprints they were, because they didn't know if they were old fingerprints or new fingerprints or fingerprints on top of another fingerprint, or was it fingerprints highlighted by the blood, or was it left in the blood? I mean, they went through this whole thing in the report. And you would think they would want to try to figure something out, at least try to get a match on these prints, but they did nothing with them at all. And no question at all about, well, why is his blood on the magazine inside a gun? How did it get there? It's impossible for him to get it there by simply just shooting himself in the head. It doesn't work. I mean, there's so many miracles that happened in regard to David in this case. The miracle bullet that people are trying to say that 57 is what went through him. And then we know that the left side of his head is facing a window, and the bullet ends up this way up in a ceiling. So if the trajectory is this way, because we have the exit wound out the left, then how bullets don't do magic spins and then shoot up into a ceiling, come out perfectly clean, partially expanded, and way more. I don't know.
Or let's talk about the passive blood drops that are next to the dishwasher in the kitchen.
Yeah, leading to the dishwasher too. And then on the dishwasher they found open, and there's passive blood on the floor leading to it. So that's little drops. There's a drop of blood, and then a drop of blood, and then a drop or two on the dishwasher door because it had been down. And they don't test that either?
They swab it, but don't test it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to me, that would have been, like a home run right there. That's who did this. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't tested conveniently. So
yeah, because 9 times out of 10 in my research that I did, they say that when there's passive blood, especially leading up to a kitchen, a bathroom, or whatever that's going toward somewhere where somebody can wash up, they say that the majority of the time that is the blood of the killer. Now, since there's a big spot of blood on the magazine that belonged to David, my concern is whoever did that, did they have gloves on and then they had David's blood on their hand, and then they stick it in the gun, and then as they're walking to the kitchen, are they now dropping David's blood? I don't know, but other than that, other than the magazine loaded inside of the gun, David's blood is not at the scene. Ranya's blood is not at that scene at all.
From what they got the results of, what they tested and got the results of. David's blood is not there. Ranya's blood's not there. What they got their blood off of was the knife, the gun, and the bullets that they found, which we have issues with that because 57 was found a month after the bodies were found. And is it 53? That's Rania?
Correct.
53 was found several days later, but it wasn't in the spot that she was it wasn't located where she was. And, it could have been contaminated, which I do believe happened because you look at that bullet, it doesn't look like Kamel's bullets that were connected to her. This looks like a very shiny bullet, and the same thing with David's. It's very shiny, but these are hollow points. Where is the blood and hair and tissue that should be on these bullets?
And here's the sneaky thing that Apple Valley did. We, the public and other groups, have associated these bullets with the victims. They do not ever state in any of the reports that 57 killed David or 53 killed Rania or 44 and 42 and 43 killed Kamel. They don't say that at all. They just sit there and run it and they swab it, and then they come back and go, oh, DNA was found. This DNA was found on this one, and that's it. They never piece it together. They don't tell you how and who and when and what person died and by which bullet at all. Let's see. Hold on. Oh, there it goes. Okay, Joe Black says, I am so glad to see people are still looking at this case and care. We can't forget this case. I agree. Thank you for being here. It's great to see you. And so, when we're saying, Ranya's bullet and David's bullet, it's because of the DNA and or blood and tissue that was found on these specific bullets.
Yes.
Now, Sophia did a whole bunch of research and she dug in to find out, because a lot of these, when you're reading the reports, there were several, I don't know if a lot is the correct word, but there were several samples that were so minute. Now, can you explain to them how they were able to get a profile with such tiny pieces of DNA? And so when they're telling people their DNA was found XYZ, people jump in or thinking, oh, must be they had all their blood or they had fingerprints. No, we're talking minuscule, tiny pieces that were picked up on a swab. You want to explain how they get that?
Basically, it's the loci or the loci test, LOCI.
Okay.
And this test, you can basically just have like a pinprick of blood, a little tiny grain of salt of blood, basically. And they replicate it over and over and over until it's enough DNA to be able to run a sample or run the test. And that's how they were able to do that. And I believe that they got that off of 57, and I think Ranya's too.
Yeah.
It's been a year since I've looked at this case, so I'm, if I am incorrect on those assumptions right there, I apologize.
Yeah. And I mean, I have been looking over and over, but again, this case that we were given, it's well over 1,000 pages, right, of documentation and reports. Some,
Yeah.
yeah. With the blacklight report, yeah, we're looking at over 2,000 pages. So we have read every page. We have, and so some of this information kind of sometimes, gets lost in the shuffle of our brains. But with item number 57, they had to swab it, and it was phenonegative. They could not find, it said no blood detected on item number 57. So, but they found DNA after doing the test that Sophia was talking about. So it clearly did not go through David's head. Well, it can't. It's not the miracle bullet that enters through the right side, exits through the left, spins around, and there's a glass window right to his left, and have that spin around and then shoot up into the ceiling above and then heading east or whatever over his head. Bullets don't travel like that. So we clearly, the scene is, and then, okay, I'm jumping all over, I'm sorry. But when they left that day, they left with 6 bullets and 1 unspent cartridge. And 3 of those bullets belonged to Kamel. 1 was in the ceiling, 1 was a fragment. What else was
ceiling, or it went through the basement?
Yes, it went through the floor. I'm thinking downstairs. It went through the floor and then the AK ceiling of the basement and then into the basement wall. They call it the south wall. That was number 45. And so number 45 had nothing on it. They found nothing. But they didn't leave. So when they're walking out, my take on it is they're like, oh, well, we have 3 bodies, 3 bullets, so we know what happened here. And then when the testing came back, all 3 of those belonged to Kamel. Everything belonged to Kamel. And like she was saying, Ranya's the one that had her DNA on it, which we know did not go through her body just by looking at that bullet, because it had no blood, no hair, but they were able to find trace DNA on it. Or maybe they found some of her blood when they swabbed it. I think that one was phenopositive but her body was also on that rug.
Yes. And so it could have picked up DNA when they rolled that rug up.
Yeah, because they're rolling it and it went rolling out and then onto the floor, and that's how they found it. And then number 57, which was a month later. So we have nothing that, we have no bullet that killed David, no bullet that killed Rania. And so we have 3 bodies and then only 1 body with 3 bullets that clearly are associated. You see the blood, the tissue, the hair. You see that within the expanded petals of the bullets that went through Kamel. And they don't even question their own narrative. It's like an idiot can look at this. And I'm not saying that to be rude. Someone who has 0 knowledge of anything could look at that and go, well, this guy didn't do it. He's not even here. He's missing from the scene, his house, his cell phone. And you were the one who pointed that out, Sophia, that his DNA is missing from his own cell phone. His personal cell phone did not contain his DNA at all.
And what I need to reiterate in regards to DNA and regards to item 57, they never specified that it was blood. So it could have been saliva, it could have been a hair, it could have been skin cells, it could have been anything. And when you look at the picture for that bullet, you see that it is very shiny, very clean.
Well, we can rule out blood because they say no blood detected on number 57. So we know for a fact that does not have blood. So that only leaves the DNA coming from the sources that you were just mentioning. And so, I mean, with all of this and everything that comes back in on this case and everything we have, and then also, like you were mentioning, everything that we have to prove he didn't do it, let's add on the blacklight report. So we have the report of all of the data for the laptop. And that tells us right there on the front page that his laptop that was on the island in the kitchen was accessed. The hard drive was accessed on January 14th. Now, those bodies, regardless of who they are, those bodies were already deceased on the 14th. They were found on the 17th. They're already dead. And somebody accessed the root drive of that computer. And we know that his day one journal was modified. We see all kinds of information on this blacklight report. And when we started pointing this out to the DA and then to the police department, all of a sudden there is an issue and now they can't give us any more. They refuse to release what they had promised us, which was what? The breakdown of text messages? Is that what you're waiting for?
Yes, text messages and emails, which I was promised. And then once we pointed out that there was an issue in regards to the blacklight report, and also that somebody had forged a police document, the one that supposedly shows like the order of death and says that David was smoking pot right up until their deaths. And
was not Detective Kokonos? Or
yes.
how would you say his name? I mean, now out of all of the reports that I've read, and I really need to say this because I don't respect 98% of everybody who was involved in this case, but he is the one person, the one detective that I see that really did a good job and followed what he should have. So he actually, didn't he have to write an affidavit?
He did. He did write an affidavit, and I did receive that. And then I received 2 different letters from the county prosecutor's office, basically stating that if this case ever goes to court, that I was like, who are they going to charge? You guys basically condemned David. So basically, from what those letters implied was that they were still looking into the case and that there was a possibility in the future that somebody could be charged with this crime, because they said that murder does not have a date where you can't what is that word?
Prosecute. They can still prosecute, and charge for a murder case. But what they did, and you're right, the DA, what she said, she was the which attorney was she? The district attorney? Who was that?
She was the county attorney for their county.
Yeah. Okay.
So
she's high up. They had to go to her. She then sends a letter to Sophia to tell her that they're not releasing any more information because, somewhere down the line that they could charge somebody else with this murder. And so ergo, since murder cases are never really closed, then now all of a sudden they can't give us any information. And this is a big crock of patootie cakes, because they adjudicated and they closed this case, which means that they shut it down. They said they've solved it. They found the person involved. Ergo, there's no chance that they would reopen it. And they tell us, I had a talk with the captain, chief, whatever his name was, Right Skull, whatever his name was at the time. And no, it was a different one, because Right School would never contact me. He always put it off onto somebody else. So
I think it was the new one.
Yeah, one of the other officers. Oh, there's Greg. Let me add Greg in here. Hi, Greg. So he contacts me, and then they're like saying, we're perfectly happy, we're not ever going to open this case again, it's done, it's settled. And then all of a sudden they send this letter going, oh well, we can't give you any more information because we may just go ahead and you never know if we're going to charge someone else in the case. And it's like, you already adjudicated it within the courts, it's adjudicated, so you can't use that as an excuse. But we live there, so we can't fight it.
Yeah, and one really interesting thing about those letters is
limitations.
Yes, that's what I was trying to think of, and I was going blank. It was right there in my head, and I was just going blank on it. But those 2 letters that I received from the county attorney, they never mentioned murder-suicide. They only mentioned the murders.
Right.
And that really stood out. And the fact that in the future, if they went to court, because somebody was already contaminating the case by forging documents, that this might become an issue. And that was their reasoning for not giving us anything else in regards to this case. And I no longer was able to get the text messages and emails. So.
And what say you? Oh no. Latin lover.
Right, was cracking up about that one.
You forgot the 4,000.2. That's pretty important.
Okay, I'm sorry. Latin lover 4,000.2. No, what were you before? What did they call you before? What was your name?
Which one?
It was
nothing good.
Yes, Hot Greg. That's it, Hot Greg.
Okay, I could change that. I could flip that around here.
Leave that one. That's great. That's great. Okay, Mr. Latin lover Greg, what's your take on this?
I've just been listening. I've been listening in, and I think it kind of jogged my memory a little bit about the how is there no DNA on item 45? But then, as you were touching on, there's touch DNA, there's some DNA on 57. Like, there should be DNA on all of them, right?
Correct.
So how, and then with the whole cell phone thing too, it's like, how does it happen unless somebody wiped it? They wiped them both clean, but it's, I mean, I could see wiping the cell phone clean. That makes sense to me, especially if they're being held hostage or something in their own home. But how is there nothing on 45? How is that possible? Would they have to wipe it first? Is it how they took it out of the south wall? How does that happen?
That's a good question. We can only speculate. And was whoever loaded that into the magazine, were they wearing gloves and just took it out of the packaging, straight from the packaging with gloves? We don't know. But yeah, it's like if they can find minuscule DNA for David, which would make sense, because if he's the one loading his magazines, it would make sense that his DNA would be on those bullets and they would find something. But yet, You're right. You're correct. On 45, they find nothing at all.
There should be somebody's on there, which I think is one more thing that kind of leads some people to think, well, this had to have been a professional hit on some level, at some level. And you could even make the argument that the whole mess, the reason why the crime scene is so messy, that is actually part of this very sophisticated hit.
Yeah, they created a ton of chaos. So the mess that they set it up to try to look like a crime scene just creates nothing but chaos, because we can run in circles and we point out everything. And it's like, well, this is yeah. And we're like, it just doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And shall we talk about the bullet matching the gun or not matching the gun? Weren't you the one who was coming through with that?
Yes. In the ballistics report, and this is buried deep within the 488-page BC report. And I mean, it's buried deep in there, and it's in 2 places. Now, here's something else that any of our listeners or anyone who watches this, that when you clean your weapon, you do not leave a bore patch in your weapon. Now, David was a veteran. He was in the military. He knew how to clean his weapons. He was creating a movie. They would go out to the range and fire all the time. So he knows that you don't leave the bore patch in the weapon. There's only one place, one or maybe two places that the bore patch is mentioned. They mention that they found a bore patch within the gun, inside of the gun. David wouldn't do that. Now, why don't they mention that, like make that part of the report? But they don't. They list it as items that were found within the gun in one place, buried deep in the report. And then when they're doing test fires, they did 4 separate test fires. So they have 4 bullets. And in that report, it states poor reproducibility for lands and grooves. So they fired 4 separate ones, and they had a hard time trying to get consistent lands and grooves, anything to match up. And then they take item number 57, compare the lands and grooves with the small pellet the fragment, tiny fragment of number 31. Was that it, Greg? Because I know, Greg, you were the one who pointed this out a lot. They match 57 to the weapon via item 31, which is a petal, just a fragment. And then they say that the lands and grooves match.
And the way that they worded it was so freaking confusing. It's like, okay, does it match or not? Because what's going on here? It was tricky. Yeah. It was, and I know that we had some back and forth on that a lot. So.
Yeah, they made it seem like everything was cut and dry, and then nothing is. There's absolutely nothing here that is cut and dry, where you would just say, okay, yeah, definitely a double murder suicide. Let's go on to the next case, which, as Sophia knows, the next case is weird too. So something in the
weird, but it adds up a lot better than this case did.
They also missed bullets in that case too, remember? At least one bullet. It was like, so that's how they roll, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, and I know this is hard to understand because I didn't get it either. But the one time I went and I spent the day at the coroner's office with my friend, and the one call that we went on happened to have been a shooting. And I asked them because they figured out they had missed, when they got the photos back. I'm trying to think of how it worked out. It was so long ago, but then they figured out that they had missed one of the bullet wounds on the body until later, once we got back to the coroner's office. And I'm not sure if the body was there, and then we're looking at the body. I can't remember. It's been too long. But so I asked them, I was like, well, is that normal? Do you guys normally miss bullets? And they're like, yeah, you have no idea, because sometimes it can go through a wall. Sometimes it gets lost in the drywall. Sometimes it gets lost in furniture or within a body. They're like, sometimes we can't find it. Mm-hmm. So that kind of makes sense. However, it seems like AVPD went out of their way to find just enough to match their narrative, but then it came back and bit them in the butt when the DNA all proved to be Kamel. So
yeah, or like Nick's favorite saying is, "Why didn't they look up?"
Yes. Well,
if
yes.
that hole was there, obviously they didn't look up.
And when I think it was Boone or Booth, because I get those two names mixed up, that was called to go out. First of all, we know Klein was the one who reported it. Klein said he was there with David's father. They contact David's father. He's like, I wasn't there with him. I did not let him into that house. So, we'll get to you in just a second. Yes, I know, right? So we know that. So whichever one it was either Boone or Booth. We know Klein was there without permission. He went up into the attic. He's now contaminating the scene. He admits he's trying to find it. And then their first words were, they opened the door and they saw an obvious hole in the ceiling. Now, if you have over 30 people running through this scene for 10 hours, 12 hours, maybe, whatever it was. And nobody from BCA, nobody from the coroner's office, no one from the police department, no one from the sheriff's department, nobody saw the bullet hole in the ceiling. But yet they want us to believe that this obvious hole was there the entire time. Explain it to me. Now, Joe says, for those who listen and can't watch, Joe Black says, the bore patch is ridiculous. You don't have to even have military training. That's firearm basics. Also, bore patches are usually white, reassembling the weapon. It'll stick out like a sore thumb. Thank you. I have been trying to put this out there. It's part of the cleaning thing. You don't leave a bore patch in your weapon. And yet to have this buried so deep in the reports and only mentioned once and never mentioned again is ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. God. Okay, sorry, my phone auto-corrected on that. Not fireworks. Plenty of firearm training.
You want to read what you wrote for those who only listen?
David had plenty of firearm training. He went to the range and often did drills. And you can read that in his journal, too. He was excited that he was going away for that Saturday to do drills. And, you know, I don't even know exactly what he was doing at the range, but, you know, it looked like he was having a great time. He would take photos, too, of them at the range. So.
Yeah, and I went and I asked several people up here where I live, one of them being my son, because my son is really into going to the range and firing weapons. And I asked him, I'm like, how likely is it for someone who deals with weapons all the time that they would leave the bore patch inside the weapon and then fire it? And he goes, nobody would do that. And it's across the board. When you're asking even people at the range themselves, they're like, nobody does that. And David was too smart to leave a bore patch in his weapon, you know? And then Sophia says later, she says, so that's a really wonderful point, Joe. And that's for those, again, who are only listening and aren't watching. So we have poor reproducibility on the test fires. We have a bore patch that was located within the weapon. We have no DNA of David on the weapon itself. No bullet that matches his, no bullet that matches Ranya's. So no high velocity blood spatter. We have DNA with a mixture of 2 or more people that will exclude David and or Ranya or Kamel.
Mm-hmm.
So we have an extra person. They say that the mixture, when it's of 2 or more people, that it would not be found within the general population. They would expect not to see it outside of a related person in the general population. So that only leaves a related person. So who is in there doing this and touching these bullets?
And then you add in that little note at the end of David's autopsy saying that he had, Catherine, explain once more.
Yeah, he had marked autolysis. Is that what you're talking about? The marked autolysis? Mm-hmm. So again, when you're going through the stages of decomp, as soon as you cease to breathe and brain function and everything just stops and you're truly dead, the body begins the process called autolysis. It's where it begins to break down on a cellular level. So that, imagine, for lack of a better term, the body begins to eat itself. It starts breaking things down. And with autolysis, with the stages of autolysis, you have, I think, 3 or 4 different stages. So the very beginning, they just died. It's like whatever. And then early stages, early to moderate, you can have up to 25 to 50% of the nucleus of these cells will be broken down because the body is breaking it down as cells are dying, decomposing, and going away. Those are the stages that Kamel and Ranya are at. Now, David, with marked autolysis, he is at up to a 75% of his nuclei are now broken down and become water within the cell. So that means he has been dead longer. His decomposition has been going on for a longer period of time. So if you have that, the police cannot explain to us how it is that that's the case, and yet they're still saying he committed murder and then suicide hours, if not a day later.
Correct. So with everything added together, we have a staged case where David was being used as the patsy. So
what's your biggest contention, Greg? I'm sorry, Sophia. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Greg.
Within the whole case, what's your biggest bone of contention?
Oh boy.
Or two.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, I think after everything, I think it's still, I think one of the biggest problems is how quickly, I would say. If there's some items, I mean, there's so many items to go through, but the fact that they didn't test that the big blood stain on the recliner, I think that is a big problem there, you know. But just and like how would they say that David did this? They kind of made it seem like they had his fingerprints on that wall. You ask some people, they'll still say David's fingerprints were on that wall because they don't know any better.
And the reports clearly show and state no DNA was found and no prints were found within the blood. Says it in the reports.
Right. So they're like, why would anyone think that David wrote that? We don't know who wrote it. Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. So it's just there's so many things like that. But I think that recliner still bothers me because it just leads me to think that it's the biggest evidence, the biggest proof that the bodies were moved at some point. Somebody moved those bodies. You could say whatever you want to say, whether they died in the living room or not. It's hard to say that all three of them died the way that they were found. I think that's at the very least, even the most jaded people can see that.
Yeah. And Joe has another big point right there. Facts don't make for sensational headlines.
It's true. And that's why they didn't put him in there in the beginning. It was all David was a conspiracy nut. He was working on a movie. It was all of this anti-government stuff, like all that. It's like David isn't anti-government. He was in the government. He was all right with it. You know, he understood what the difference was. There's good cops, there's bad cops. There's good soldiers, there's bad soldiers. I think David ran in with the truth movement. I think he ran into a lot of people who he thought were good. And I think he realized that a lot of them weren't. And once he found himself that he was surrounded by this weird group of people, the shadowy dark force, that I think that's when a lot of this really began to unravel. And that's why the gray state, they get so mad whenever you talk about David was distancing himself. They'll agree he was distancing himself, but they say he was distancing himself because he was crazy. They won't tell you he was distancing himself because they were crazy. You realize they were weirdos.
Right, because his day one journal, he talks about that in his day one journal, how he's like, no, they're just all trying to, hang and prosper off of my coattails. And I'm done with them because they're doing nothing and I'm doing everything and I'm done with it. So, yeah. So A says, seems nobody who tries to cover the case actually reads the reports. Thank you, guys. And that's the truth. It really, really is.
Or the ones who make films about it.
Right. Well, it's not only that they don't read the reports. They watch the documentary expecting to be told the truth in the documentary. And that documentary is a work of fiction. It is literally manipulating the viewers into believing that David did this horrendous crime. That he was crazy, that he was a drug addict, that he was an abuser. And there are no facts whatsoever in any of that.
Yeah,
Um,
because he talks about trying shrooms in his day one journal, and he talks about smoking pot. And they'll talk about that, but they
that's
don't.
legitimate.
Yeah, but they don't talk about where a few months down the road where he's like, you know what? I smoked pot for the first time when I was 28, and I think I'm done with that.
That was
And in his
interesting.
and in his
Mhm.
autopsy report, he's clean of any drugs whatsoever. And it's like,
Alcohol.
Yeah, I know.
no alcohol, no drugs. So
Because
he
they were
wasn't.
also accusing him of drinking too.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
only thing that he ever really talked about drinking was beer.
Well,
They didn't find any hard alcohol in their house. They didn't even find beer, or they would have taken photos of it to bolster
Again,
their case.
right, exactly. And at the beginning, again, at that same time, he did try absinthe, and that's a pretty strong alcoholic thing.
Mhm.
But again, it's like he went to his rebellious teen years at 28 years old, and for a few months he was trying stuff, but he didn't like how it made. And in his journal, didn't he say that he and Kamel didn't like how it made them feel, and they didn't really like it? So they're like, you know what? We're not really going to do this anymore. So then the fact that you have Chris, what's his name? Who was it that said that David sent the text and said, hey, he wants going to come by and pick up some pot?
Yeah, Chris Peck.
Chris Peck, thank you. So Chris Peck is saying that he has this a text message, and the police say, yeah, we verified and we saw it. There's no copy of it. They have other copies, but they don't have anything to back up that supposed text. And there's none in David's system. It's like, oh my gosh.
David did mention trying wine when he was out in Los Angeles. He did mention that, and he actually said that he liked that better. He liked that better than beer too. But yeah, I was just shocked that we didn't find any beer or anything like that. Nothing. And then there was one because he was a Costco guy too, I think, right? I think there may have been a Costco. I don't maybe I got that wrong. I don't know if they have a Costco out there. But I remember someone did find a box in his basement. There was like a beer box. But sometimes when you go to a Costco or one of those places, they don't have bags for whatever reason.
Yeah, Whole Foods doesn't have.
Whole Foods. Yeah.
Well, at least the one here where I live, they don't have bags. You pack them in boxes.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and if he truly were an alcoholic like Sophia was, or even drank a lot, like Sophia was saying, you would have found empty cans, you would have found actual cans of beer or whatever, and there was nothing there. And Joe says on a side note, who's ever heard of a violent stoner?
And they never told us what was in the refrigerator either, right? We never found out what was inside there. I think that would have also helped to see what is old, how old is everything, all that.
But they do state
the cabinets.
They don't. Yeah, they didn't show us anything in the cabinets either.
They do state, and here's something else that I found odd, that they found no ammunition in the house, no ammunition in the garage. It was only in the trunk of the car in a locked container was the only place they found a box of ammunition.
Not even props or anything.
Yeah. And I'm like, that to me is super odd. You have the magazine in the safe. Other than that magazine, and then the magazine that was in the gun, there's no ammunition anywhere. Now that is weird.
Could that be because they had children, or maybe because they were planning on leaving?
If you have weapons all over, why would you not have, your ammunition? I mean, it just doesn't make sense that he, along with the single magazine that was in the safe, why would he not also have a box or two of ammunition within that safe? It just doesn't, it to me is really odd for someone who goes to the range and they fire as much as they did, that the only box of ammunition they found was locked in a gun case in the trunk of a car. And it's one box.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at David's basement, he's got a closet full of the foods and dry goods and things like that. And he only has one box of bullets.
Yeah. it makes no sense to me, because any prepper, you're going to have tons of ammunition. That's going to be like one of your number one things. It will be silver, gold, and ammunition, and then food. Those are your preps, because you have to protect your house, right? And it's like, he had the food, and I don't know if he had any, I don't know, but we know he didn't have the ammunition. So it's like, he could not have been what they were trying to make him out to be. Everything, all of the evidence points to the exact opposite.
Yep.
Yeah, it's possible whoever was in the house, somebody may have taken it or stolen it or something like that too. But that is pretty odd, especially like you say, he was trying to be on that prepper show. He actually was filled out some paperwork, filled out the resume thing for it. So unless all of that stuff was somewhere else, on a farm or something like that, I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking, unless he kept it at a different location. But how would that serve him?
It wouldn't. Yeah.
I mean, true preppers, you have your stash there. You have your stash at your bug out points. You have to, because if you can't get, now this is just from talking. I'm not.
You're not a prepper?
No, not. I mean, would I if I had the money? Probably, but I know I'm not. But talking to them, they're like, if you can't get to your bug out, if you have to shelter in place, you better be able to defend the home front. And with what they found there's no way he would be overrun in a day, in an hour. There's no way he could defend his home front. He had no ammunition.
And he's got room. He's got that whole basement. There's plenty of room for it too.
Mm-hmm. So. I'm going to see if I can share my screen and go over the blood stuff. So let me see. Where is my? First of all, hold on. Let me pull that up. So then maybe I can get that to be something I can choose. Window. Okay. So hopefully this will pop up here for everybody in a second. Can you guys, it says, okay, there we go. This is a spreadsheet that I put together, and this is the blood that was swabbed and logged. And these are now in the reports, you have a massive crime scene. There are 3 bodies, but they only swab 57 items. I always thought that was really odd. So we're going to go over this. They swabbed and tested 1A-3, and that was blood from in the area on the gun, which turns out, I think this was the trigger. And this one is the one where it's a mixture of 2 or more individuals. There are no minor contributors. The one who is included is David. Kamel is excluded. Doesn't match Rania. So expected to be found in an unrelated person, it says no. So this is only leaving related people. So not expected to be found within the general population. Again, 2 or more individuals. Oops, let me go back up here. Rania doesn't match. Kamel is excluded. David is included. No minor contributors, 2 or more. And this was on the trigger of the gun. So who's the other person? 1B, area from the magazine, mixture of 2 or more individuals, no minors. David is included. That doesn't match, but they can't exclude Kamel or Rania. There's just so many things wrong with all of this. 8-1, that's the knife. Areas on the knife, mixture of 2 or more individuals. Why is that? Okay, let me see if I can pull up that report. I know I wrote this correctly.
While you're pulling up that report, let me go over this for the audience.
Okay.
On January 17th, 2015, the BCA lab analysis collected 47 items from the Crowley crime scene. Out of 47 items, 16 items were tested and 21 items were left untested. And then the BCA crime scene team arrived at the Crowley home on January 17th, 2015 at 16:25 hours. They left the scene at 04:45 hours on January 18th, 2015. Basically, they had the 47 items. They came back 2 days later and collected item 53 that they had found, or the cleaners had found. And then they came back on February 18th and grabbed item 57. So all in all, that was 49 items. And they only tested 16.
And it's ridiculous. Right here, these, as she was saying, these items right here were the only ones that were tested and came back. And again, this is the problem. Let's see, on number 11, what was 11? Oh, I have to, yeah. Okay, 11 was from the west wall. We have the footprint, hallway, blood in the hallway. Not enough genetic material to know. Kamel is included, so we don't know how much, but with these others, blood from the cell phone island, mixture of 2 or more individuals. David is excluded. Again, keep in mind, that's his cell phone and his DNA is excluded. And a DNA mixture of 2 or more individuals. There are no matches. Nobody is... let's see if I can highlight that. No one is absolutely included. David is excluded, but it doesn't match Kamel or Rania. So if you have 2 or more individuals and basically everyone's DNA is missing from the cell phone, whose DNA is on the cell phone? None of this makes sense. Let's see.
See, I have that's item 35, the cell phone.
Yeah, blood from cell phone on the island.
See, I have something different in my book.
What do you have for number 35? I'm trying to find those reports. I had them, and now they're not here. I mean, I had them ready to go, and now they're not here. But let me see if I can pull them up.
I have that a blood mixture of 2 or more individuals was found on the phone. David was excluded, like you said, from being possible contributors. According to DNA results, Kamel and Rania cannot be excluded. That's what I have.
Oh, here it is. Oh my gosh, I'm so retarded.
Number 9. I can source that.
They cannot be excluded from being possible contributors. David's DNA, however, was excluded from being a part of the mixture on his very own iPhone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I'm going back to my chapter.
So they have. Go
ahead.
It doesn't make any sense. If they can't be excluded, but we know it's at least 2 or more people, it's highly unlikely that the daughter is going to be touching his cell phone.
But
for whatever.
Exactly.
Unless it's a hostage situation, then it makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah. I mean, we do know that 35 is the blood from the cell phone on the island. It's a mixture of 2 or more. David is excluded. It does not matter. We know that Camille and Rania are not included, but they can't be excluded. So in other words, it wasn't a strong DNA match for them.
Gotcha.
So if you have 2 or more individuals contributing to that blood on that cell phone on that island, whose blood is it? Now, could that be the same person that's, like Sophie was talking about earlier when we first started talking? Could that be the same person who was bleeding and left the passive blood in the kitchen? You know, none of this stuff makes any sense whatsoever. Where am I?
Some of it makes sense why they wouldn't want to test that blood, I guess, because if they start testing the blood, they may find exactly what they're looking for, which is whoever the killer is. And at some point, you got to think, you know, somebody, not the whole Apple Valley police, but it's almost just like somebody knew, because you had to feel pretty safe to be able to go in there and do this, to kill these people at whatever point. And then you have 3 weeks that go by where nobody notices it. There's always been something very strange about that particular area too. But you got to feel pretty good that you know this area. You know exactly how to commit this crime, how to pull this off, and do exactly what has been going on for 10 years.
Yeah, I just thought about that. We didn't do a show for their 10-year anniversary of the deaths, but yeah, this has been going on for some time. And Joe says, as a quote unquote paranoid as he was supposed to be, I doubt he would have trusted anyone to store his ammo for him. Very true. And, you know, if he's the supposed crazed prepper dude, he's going to have a stockpile of ammunition. I mean, he would need to, because with as much as he went to the range, the fact that there was only 1 box of ammo locked in a gun case in his trunk, it just doesn't make sense to me.
And the fact that they took out numerous working weapons from his home. They only found bullets for the handgun that was supposedly used to kill them.
Good point.
That just does not make sense.
Excellent point. So there's so much wrong, so many things wrong with this case. And this is why I think most of us are just like, there's no way he did this. Whether or not it's them on that floor, it doesn't matter. It's still the fact that he did not kill his family. And the police know it. The ME knows it. The DA knows it. Everybody knows it. But nobody is willing to come forward.
And why should they? If the family isn't going to, if the family isn't going to stand up for David and for David's wife and for their daughter, why should the police or anybody else, why should they spend any time going through it? I think that's one of the real sad tragedies here too, is how the family is just, where are they? They're just completely missing.
They signed on the documentary, and David's own friends condemn him.
Yeah.
You know, and they were condemning him before the police actually came out and said, hey, this is a murder-suicide, and here is the case that's completed. They were already condemning him and working on a freaking documentary.
Yeah, if the police had known more about this, about the falling out, and then it comes out, well, they really did. They knew about what was happening with Danny Mason. Maybe they didn't know everything about Sean Wright and that big falling out. Maybe they didn't know about some of the other people's falling out too. But I mean, it's on the social media, and they have all of that stuff. They went through the same stuff that we did, all on David's, the stuff that wasn't taken down. But just the stuff that wasn't taken down, you can clearly see that David is rebuilding a new team. And so why do the cops, why are the Gray State Goons so close to the investigation from the very start? It's very strange.
Yeah, especially when, you know, as a matter of operation, the standard operating procedure is the immediate family and then close friends, they need to be investigated. It's just what you do.
They want to be cleared. You want to clear them,
process
right?
of elimination, right? But instead, they bring them in like a mother hen. Oh, come here, come stay under my wings. And what did you guys think? And who do you think did this? And, oh yeah, he did it. He killed his family. Wow. And then they try to take over everything. Like
and they still couldn't get their stories right. I mean, what they should have done, they should have had David's dad asked him questions about what happened. David's brother asked him questions. David said, got them all. But no, they get them all into the same area. They allow them to create a family story about it. But if you want to see, and even then, there's still things that we find out that don't make sense, that their stories just are not lining up. And the police they do nothing. They don't follow up on it. They don't follow through on any of these strange things. And when people start questioning it, the story becomes the people that are questioning it, not what they're questioning, but it becomes that why are these crazy people questioning what we already know? What that David did it. It's done. That's it. So I can see why a lot of people just got turned off and just got fed up or got scared off and just didn't, said that's it. I'm out. I'm not going to talk anymore about this, because when it first happened, there were a lot of people. And you quickly found out who was really a part of the truth movement and who was just faking the funk. And it became very, very clear, very, very quickly.
And it shocked me because I had never heard of him. I didn't know anything about this, like I said, a million times over, until I saw Greg and Dan on the Netflix movie or sloppymentary that Greg coined the term. So then I'm looking at this, and here's the thing, like you were just saying, Greg, it's like they believe Danny August Mason. They believe, Sean Wright. They believe everything that these people, that is clear in David's day one journal, he was distancing himself from, and his view on what happened. They go and tell the police, oh yeah, David was acting really weird in August. We were at this birthday party and he was withdrawing. And then you read the day one journal and David's like, I'm tired of these fakers. I don't want them a part of my life, and I want them away from my family. Yeah. And then they'll believe the guys who are spreading lies, and they know they're lying, instead of trusting the man and his own words. But then they try to twist his words and say, oh, well, no, he said this, so we have to believe this. He said he smoked pot. So see, he was a pothead. And I'm like, oh my God. That
was only in the summer. That didn't happen leading up to the crime.
Correct.
And so, or like how people, I think it was the article that one guy wrote, I can't remember his name. And then the movie makes it sound like David was smoking pot, he was drinking, and that he was doing all these weird searches on his computer and everything leading up until the very minute that he kills them.
Yes, right.
And
you guys right, exactly. You guys want to know what he was searching? He was searching some war scenes because he was writing the script. He was rewriting. He rewrote the entire script a couple of times, completely writing out Danny August Mason's character. He was, so when you view what he's researching, and we have it as part of the Blacklight reports, you see where he's at, and everything that he's gone to matches the scene in the script. Nothing outside, nothing out of the ordinary, and yet they make a big deal out of this.
There was no spiraling.
None.
Not on his side, at least. Maybe some other people.
Now you get where David, I think this was November, or was it October, where David started getting very upset with Sean and Danny August Mason, that they were pushing him, and David was trying to sever ties with Danny August Mason, and Danny August Mason was playing games with David in regards to this. And it's interesting how that paperwork never got pushed through, and David dies.
Mm-hmm.
And now Danny August Mason in May is now in Hollywood trying to push the movie.
Yeah.
He is.
Yeah, so he's trying to make money off of David's work. And here's the thing is when David on the first screen, our manuscript, or, I'm sure there was some collaboration, but David wrote that script. And I will fight this until the day I write. David wrote that. It was not Danny August Mason. He had zero claim to that. Just because he may have tossed in an idea here or there, he had no say, no claim to this at all. But despite that, David went ahead and completely rewrote it. And he talks about that in his day one journal. I am rewriting this and I am doing this on my own. Okay, right there.
Yeah. And then he sends the script to the producers, the Mikes.
Yeah, what he wrote.
And he's waiting on their response. But that was near the holidays, so he just.
But Dan,
well, I think based on the script David sent when he wrote it on his own, then based on that, I think that's when the Mikes wanted to turn it. They said this would be better as a TV show, and I'd love to see what David wrote as a TV show, because we don't have any of that stuff. That's got to be out there somewhere too. But obviously, if somebody wants to make sure that stuff never gets out there, that could be something that was taken from that house too.
Yeah, and when Dan interviewed the Mikes, the one that, and they said, no, there was a deal on that table. We offered $30 million. Now, it wasn't $30 million to David. It was $30 million to produce this into a show. What was it going to be on?
Like it's going to be on A&E, the same that the documentary ended up being on, which is weird too.
Yeah. So, for people who say that he didn't have so he spiraled and got upset because there was no deal. And David's own father says, oh, he told me that he walked away from it. And the two Mikes are the people who are funding this and getting the funding for it. They're like, no, it was on the table and we were negotiating and we were going forward with it. So we see a lot of reason for people who would want to hurt him, because he went forward and he was going to leave everybody behind, and they were moving to California. And David was so fed up with Sean and with Danny August Mason. And who was it? Was it Sean saying, oh, you can hire me and then just pay me $50,000 a year and I'll go with you. Right. And he's like, what?
Yeah.
He's the Rolodex.
He was actually disgusted by that. He was annoyed because it's like, no, that's just not going to work for us.
Yeah, he's like, I'm tired of doing all the work and you guys thinking you're just going to get, famous or whatever. And that's really what they wanted. They wanted to ride and stay with him until they could get their breakout in Hollywood. And he's like, I've been busting my butt and doing all the work. No. I'm leaving y'all behind. So there's a lot of, what's that word? Motive. There's a lot of motive and I am not accusing them. Let me put that caveat in here. But there's motive behind, Danny August Mason or Sean Wright to then hurt David and his family. There is zero motive for David to hurt himself and his family. He had a $30 million deal. They were getting ready to sell their house. They were looking forward to the future. He stated in his diary that he had never gotten along with his daughter. It was the best it had ever been. He finally learned how to connect with her. He was so happy with his wife. The sun rose and set in Kamel for him. She was it for him. He has the world by the balls. So why? Where's his motive to do all this?
It's not there.
Yeah.
It's not there.
And Joe says, and with David posting that he planned to post it for free, and I think that was The Rise, right? Those two wouldn't have made a dime. Exactly. Mm-hmm. So David was going to post The Rise for free, correct?
Yeah. Which is the documentary companion piece.
That's the one that Sean Wright worked with him a lot on,
Mhm.
from what I remember. In fact, he's actually in it being interviewed. Is that correct, Greg?
Yeah, he wanted his stuff taken out. That's what really caused. That was one of the last conversations that it was taken
Hmm.
off of Facebook. And well,
Now,
who took it off of
tell everybody
Facebook?
why.
Well, Sean Wright, in the documentary Great State, The Rise, in the rough cut, which was put out there, Sean Wright was talking about not paying your taxes and how you could, doing some, what we would call today sovereign citizen nonsense kind of thing. But he was basically saying we should not pay taxes. And so Sean Wright wanted that taken out because apparently he had some case for not paying his taxes.
He was being sued by the federal government for not paying taxes. So he was sent a text message, or was it an email? He sent.
He posted on Facebook. He
Okay,
posted it
post
on
on. So
Facebook.
either you pull this out, or I'm facing 72. It was the 72. He's facing a long time in prison. You need to remove that, because if you keep that in there, I'm going to prison.
Right,
So
right.
and
Which
the police don't think that's motive.
I mean, I don't. Do you go to prison for that? I guess if you're
Tax evasion, yeah.
Al Capone or something.
No,
But,
there are a lot of people go to prison for tax
okay.
evasion. It depends on what he didn't pay and how long he didn't pay it. So
Didn't he sit in jail for like 30 days or 60 days?
According to Mason Hendricks, and so consider the source there, but I think he just ended up paying. I don't think but I don't know. I don't think he did any jail time for that.
for the one that
that
he was talking about in that one, he did go back and pay. So when the court came time for that, he, when you're following all this, he went in and paid. So he didn't go, because he came up with the money, and so he didn't have to go and face prison time, because now he met the burden and paid it. But it's like, yeah, but at the time we have motive for Danny, we have motive for Sean, no motive for David, but the police latch on, and David's family latches on to David as the culprit.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
It's strange. That's the most
And
strange.
we don't have an exact date for when Dan Jr. showed up at the house and dropped off gifts.
Right.
And once again, we are not pointing fingers, we are stating facts.
Yep.
We don't have an exact date. How do you not know? Was it before Christmas? Was it after Christmas? Was it 2 days after Christmas? A day? We don't know, because we have multiple answers.
Yes, and
From the same person.
Yes. And in the
Yes.
police reports, it shows that when they were interviewing neighbors, and in fact, even from, the wackadoodles next door, they couldn't even be consistent on when they saw the packages there. But the neighbors, for the most part, the majority of the neighbors are saying they didn't see anything there until January. But Dan Jr. is trying to say he dropped them off at Christmas or whatever, somewhere around that time. And it's like, really? Now, if there's a pile of packages on somebody's doorstep for 2 weeks, I'm thinking most of the neighborhood would notice.
I think so.
Yeah.
Depending on the neighborhood, I guess. But
well, they all seem to be pretty nosy.
yeah.
So,
Well, yeah, you would think the people who lived across the street would probably notice that too. But yeah, I don't know. Everybody's just kind of living in their own world. But the neighbors also thought that there were mannequins when they looked in the window. So it's I don't know. It's definitely this. There's so many strange things about this. And it was so hard to figure out. It's what is meant to just throw people off, what to focus on, what not to focus on. Like I got focused on the paper boy, because the paper boy, and when he dropped the mail off and dropped the paper off, he couldn't get his story straight either. Right. Just because people can't get their story straight, I'm not saying the paper boy was involved in it or anything like that either. But you just have these situations and all of this stuff where he says he dropped the paper off on the one day. The paper coordinator gives a completely different date. So it's like, unless he went back in time, there's no way the paperboy could have dropped off the papers when he said he did. He is a minor, so his mom was also there. His mom gives a different date too. And so you have 3 different people all talking about when the paper was dropped off there, and what is the importance? Does it even matter about the paper? And I think it is, because it could actually help us narrow down, when they actually died, when the last thing was, what was going on, when was the last time they were out of that house. It could have helped narrow down a lot of those things. But and this is what the police do. I think they did their job in following up on that. They follow up on the newspaper person. They follow up on certain things, and there's other things that they just don't follow up on or don't even look at.
Mhm.
So,
Can I add that, like in the police reports, we discussed this earlier, but they say that Chris Peck was the one who was talking with David in regards to dropping off pot. But we don't have that text message whatsoever. But they did follow up on Camille supposedly texting her friend about getting together for coffee and exchanging recipes or something like that. So we have proof of that, but we don't have proof of the supposed interaction between Chris Peck and David. And when you go and you look at the phone logs, there absolutely is not any type of conversation between Chris Peck and David, and there hasn't been for months. Nothing via text message and nothing phone call wise.
yeah.
So,
And if the police would have pressed Chris on that, they would have forced, he would have had to either show those text messages. Because I think, and I could be wrong, but I think Camel's friend is the one who offered the photo, sent them the the screenshots of the text back in.
But her phone records corroborate the text messages, and that's the problem. The AT&T reports for both his old phone and his new phone do not corroborate any connection between David and Chris Peck at all, like Sophie was saying, for months. So it's like, if it's not showing up on the AT&T phone logs, then it didn't happen from David's phone.
And there was something similar that happened with David's dad, right? Where David's dad said he talked to his son at a certain day or something. Then there's no record of that too, right?
None.
yes.
So it's like, come on. And again, there's no proof of any of that. It's just, hearsay. Oh, well, he said, or he sent this text. There's zero proof that that text actually exists.
Yep.
But,
And so, darn it all, I was going to say something.
Chris Peck?
Well, this is why I was requesting the text messages. I was requesting emails and anything that was in Messenger. And that's when I got shut down when I was trying to get that information. I was promised it, and I have the email where they said, yes, sure, we'll get this to you within a couple of days. And then I got shut down.
yeah, and Joe is saying, and how was it nobody saw inside the living room when dropping off the packages? We've asked that question so many times and we get no answer.
I think Dan Hinnon gave a pretty good answer for that one.
What did he say? I don't remember.
He said from where you're at, you wouldn't be able to see it. You would have to go and like walk right up to it
And
in order to look.
But wouldn't it depend on the time of day though? Because if at night the lights came on, wouldn't something be visible? See, that's just it. Nothing is consistent. We don't know when he dropped it off, what time of day he dropped it off, what date he dropped it off, supposedly. Well, I mean, there, but.
And from what people have stated, the curtains in the living room were supposedly closed a lot of the time. And then all of a sudden they're open. When were they opened if they had been closed for a majority of that time? And who opened those blinds or the curtains? Excuse me, not blinds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's just,
it doesn't make sense. I mean, even from a standpoint where somebody goes in there and you murder them, unless that's part of the game plan, is to leave the curtains open or something. Like, I would think if somebody went in there and wanted to kill him, keep the curtains closed, keep everything closed. But that's not the case. The back door is open. Like you said, the curtains are open just there. Nowhere else. All the other curtains are all closed and everything. Everything else is closed down except for there, which is interesting.
Joe says maybe the magic bullet opened them.
Could be.
I'm thinking the dog did, Paleo.
Yeah.
It could be a demon. Whatever demon was mulling around in that home, I believe. Who knows? The demon wanted the windows open. It's a little too dark in here for me.
I need some comfort.
Oh man. I know before we, close off, I did want to share the screen one more time. I'm going to share my whole screen. So just give me a second here so I can pull up the photos, because I want to show everyone the blood patterns that were the only type of blood spatter that was found within that house. And you will see that it is not consistent with gunshots. So give me a second here. Make sure.
Yep, that's medium.
Yep, this is medium velocity. Right here. This looks like cast off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this is just to show you, again, cast off. And let me see if I can find the blood spatter by the dishwasher. Oh, I can't even think of the right words.
And to give the audience an idea of what high velocity would look like, it's a mist. The blood particles are teeny tiny, but they, it would be like consistent all around and almost like a cone in a way. So it's not going to be leaving bigger drops and things like that.
Right.
What you're seeing at the crime scene.
Correct.
You don't even see it with the larger areas of the blood that's on the wooden floors, like in the corners by the hallway. There's a whole bunch of blood, but it's like a mixture of cast off. It's a mixture of medium and low velocity and passive, but there's not high velocity blood spatter. It is very distinct.
Yeah, exactly. And the point that she was saying that you have to really remember is, okay, here we go. Here's the dishwasher. It's a fine mist. Now let me zoom in here. This would be an example of passive because it's on the floor and it's dripping. Here's a drip, here's a drip, here's a drip. Another view, or maybe the spot, but this is a drip, this is a drip. So it looks like it could be coming from somebody's hand. Maybe it's full of blood and as they're walking. Now let's get to the one that's on the dishwasher itself. Again, just another close up. And this was not tested. And you would think that this would be one of the first things that they test. Okay, here we go.
It's definitely from somebody who is walking towards the dishwasher. Mm-hmm. If it came from the living room, it would be at an angle. And these are directly, dripping down. It makes almost a perfect circle in a way.
Yeah. So exactly. And so the fact that the blood, how it lands on the open dishwasher like this, it's like, this tells me that this was a family interrupted. Kamel was in the middle of cleaning up dishes. And so they were interrupted. The life that they were living at that moment completely came to a stop and a standstill rather abruptly. What is that?
There were some food items on the counter. There was a pan on the stove that had oil in it still. Yeah, it was like somebody came to the door or busted through, whatever. We don't know because there's no actual proof.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, there's still coffee in the pot.
mhm.
Yeah, some of the wild theories, I remember that. It was Sean Wright spreading false stuff. I believe between messages with him and Dan Hannon, he told Dan Hannon that first the police had to kick the door down, and then it's like, why would you say all of this stuff that is not true, that cannot be backed up, that people are going to easily find out? I don't know. I don't know what they thought, if they really thought they were going to be able to hide all of this stuff from the public. It does not do them any favors. And to ask the cops to hide all of the Muslim stuff too, I thought was very, very strange.
Yeah, exactly. And it's this pattern of
This
blood
color.
here that makes me think. Now, we have no proof, but this is what makes me think, is that there was some type of tarp or plastic lying down, and this could be blood coming off of the edges of whatever it was that was lying on the floor, because like we've pointed out, like there's a massive blood stain on the corner of the recliner, but there's no puddle of blood underneath it. You've got bodies on the floor, we clearly damaged, no blood underneath them. Something had to catch that blood. And it's too much to go into tonight, but I do have a video up where I talk about, and I think Sophia is with me on this one, or maybe it was before, but I talk about the void patterns. You will find void patterns within this floor. One thing that Sophia found when we were doing the blood sample is that on the rug, when so you have the recliner here, the rug is here on the floor, the bodies are over here, but underneath, like on the edge of that rug and right underneath where the fibers of the rug come up that make the shag or whatever, it's underneath that section. So all the bodies are over here, but underneath that section you see spots of blood underneath that, where it's coming over this way. We know that the damage didn't come this way by the blood spatter patterns. It came this way. And so how did it get underneath in that area? So we cover that too. But when Sophia found that, it was like, oh, holy cow, that's a darn good question. How did that get there? But anyway, I wanted to, show you guys that there is no high velocity blood spatter in that house at all. None. And like Sophia was saying, it's like, imagine put paint on a toothbrush or on a and then flick it, and imagine how fine that mist would be, or put some in your mouth and just, where it's super fine mist. That's what it's going to look like on a surface. There's none anywhere. Again, 4 bullets to 3 heads and no high velocity. None.
There's a lot of things that don't add up for such a cut and dry case. I mean, really makes you think.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't think it will ever be reopened, but from our research, we have found several very damning key facts that prove that David is innocent. But the biggest one is the autopsy report, that last paragraph, because it says it right there. David was dead before Kamel and Rania. He had 70% marked autolysis.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that he was dead before they were. They are in the same environment. They're in the same living room. They all died supposedly the same way. And David shows proof that he was dead at least, I don't know, a day or so more.
And
Than,
I would say anywhere from 12 hours to 24 hours he was, gone longer. I'm trying to find that on the where it's located on the autopsy report. Because I was going to show everybody, it's like, it's there. We've seen it, we've shown it before, but I'm trying to find where it says marked autolysis.
It is right at the end of the last page. It's almost like the second to last sentence or something.
Okay.
It's snuck in and it's hiding in plain sight.
Hiding in plain sight.
Literally took us years before we realized.
Yeah.
You realize that.
Yeah, I don't know how many times I read it and I'm like, what? Wait a second. Wait. That's huge. And I'm looking on the last page. Oh, that's Rania. Oh, no wonder I couldn't find it. Sheepers creepers. I'm looking at the wrong report. I must be getting tired because my brain is beginning to not function correctly. Okay. I'll get to the last page. Okay. You were 100% correct there, girlfriend. So let me get this last one and then I will pull us up. And if we want to shut it down after this, but I think it's real important that we show everybody that what the autopsy reports state. Okay. Let me go here on that one. Let's go there. And then, oops, wrong one. That one there. Okay. Okay, I'm going to share my screen one more time. Present, share screen. And I'll do the entire screen again just because it's easier. So that way.
Yeah. That's really right.
It's pulling. Okay. So we see that this is case number, her autopsy number is 0368, and this is Rania. And we see here sections of the heart, liver, and kidney show autolysis and postmortem bacterial growth. No significant pathologic abnormalities are identified. A section of soft tissue surrounding the entrance gunshot wound of the head shows blood, fragments of gray matter, white polarizable material, and granular brown material. Okay, you see here where it says shows autolysis. Now let's get Kamel's. Oops, wrong one. Here's Kamel. There's her name. Here's the microscopic examination, autolysis, 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 autolysis. Now we've got David's. Here's David's. Sections of liver and kidney show marked autolysis and no discernible pathological abnormalities. This word right here, marked, is what seals the deal. Again, in medical terminology, that means more, it means advanced, means extremely noticeable. His says marked, the other two do not. And this is signed by the same pathologist that the other two. And let me show you what's on.
What does that one mean right in front of it? Does that mean anything? Is that referring back to something, or?
It's just like number one, and why they put that, I have no idea. It's like if you're going to start listing 1, 2, 3, but they only had a 1.
Oh, I see. Like in Kamel's.
Yeah. Let's go back here to see who signed these. This is Jessica Lelinski and Michael K. Morey. Jessica Lelinski, Morey, and then Jackson. Now, it was explained to me that it had all three because this was a child, and this would have been, Johnson would have been the head of the entire facility. But here are the two main pathologists.
Mm-hmm.
And then Kamel's. Maury, and Jackson. So we have Maury on all three of these, and on David's is the only one that has marked. So we have the same doctor in all three people. And this doctor knows exactly what he's doing. He knew what he was doing when he wrote marked. And he put it there for a reason, because David was further along in the decom process.
And yet they still ruled his death as a suicide.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't work that way, folks.
Yeah. Anyway.
Thank you for joining us, Joe. But do you guys have anything else you want to say for tonight? Or we can always come back at another time. I'm starting to lose my voice, so I think I've talked too much.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind coming back. Just weekends are usually a lot better. I feel like I'm a lot more awake at this time. I'm so burnt out from the day.
Well,
so
we did this
are always
because it was supposed to be for William, because William was the one who said he could only do it Wednesdays, and it had to be at a certain time. So next time, William, you didn't make it, so we're doing it when it's convenient for us. We love you, but sorry, dude. We get it. I mean, I understand he's busy too, but so next time we'll definitely do it on a weekend. And Geppetto says, wasn't there a discrepancy with the tattoos matching? Yes. In fact, we will go over that next time. In fact, we'll make that one of the topics of conversation.
Yeah, that's another good one there. Those all sound like things that should be in the first chapter of a second book on this case.
Yes, we're waiting for that book to get done there, Mister.
Well, I hope we can all collab on it and figure all of that out,
But I want to say thank you to everyone who showed up tonight. And, if you have any questions, leave them down below in the comments section, and we will definitely get back. Or if you want us to cover something in particular, let us know, and then we can do that as well. But hopefully we'll see you again on the next one. You guys have any parting words?
I just wanted to thank everybody who was listening, and we are looking forward to seeing you all next time.
Yep.
Mr. Greg?
No, I don't think so. I've been looking at the Gene Hackman story, which seems kind of strange. It's like another dog found dead, and another strange case there. So I haven't found too much on that one, but there's a great movie. I believe it's called Homestead. I don't know if you've heard of that movie or not. I covered a little bit of it, and it looks like gray state. So maybe next time I'll play the trailer and we could talk about that.
Okay. That sounds good. Okay. Thank you, Geppetto. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Joe. And thank you for those who were here watching and watched in silence. We still appreciate you 100,000%. So hope you guys all have a good night.
All right. God bless you.